like it's an investment.
All right,
I think
folks. Sorry, Mark, but we have
yeah,
3 matchups left to decide before we have one of our finalists, and we're getting close to the hour mark. I don't want to make it go too long, so I think I'd like us to get these last 3 going, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, the first, I guess, would it be quarterfinals? I don't know the terms. I'm gonna say it wrong, so I'm just not gonna say it.
This is the
Christ
next
alive,
bracket.
fucking bracket
I
podcast.
don't fucking know.
Jesus
I hate
Christ.
brackets.
The next matchup we're gonna talk about is Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind versus Mario Kart Double Dash. Maceo, it's all you.
Oh wait, so we're not going to do the other ones first?
No, because I think
Not the same group of
I'd like to
people.
have the same
Yeah.
folks to talk about them, and we've been talking about these, so we have the context on these.
Sure.
Fair enough.
Fine.
Fuck it.
Between Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind, and Double Dash, Double Dash. I love Double Dash. I have no attachment to Morrowind. I voted for it in the last one because I just kind of thought it would be more interesting. I like Borderlands 2 a lot, but it's not like a game that I hold super dearly, so Morrowind was more interesting to me. But I do think Mario Kart, like, even though it's a much simpler game, I think there's something to be said for, creating something that really, through its simplicity, stands the test of time. So, Double Dash.
Respect. All right, Mark's
I
up.
respect my ass.
Yeah, I guess, like, I'm here's the conflict I'm struggling with.
wants to be
Elder Scrolls 3 is trying to make something work in a medium that it doesn't know how to make it work in yet. It's trying to take a thing that was pen and paper and had a very specific way of being fun, which is like the anticipation around dice rolls, and it's trying to move that into the game world, and it's not quite figuring out exactly why that isn't great yet. Double Dash, however, has the advantage of being built on the backs of generations of racing games. And people know what they want in racing games. And racing games naturally fit very comfortably into, like, the video game medium. It's very obvious and simple. And like Maceo said, it is something simple that stands the test of time. But, like, I don't know. I think I feel like there has to be some kind of X factor for sticking your neck out and trying something that, like, you're not really sure about yet. And granted, it's the third game. Like, that isn't lost on me.
Oh.
But, like, I don't know. I'm done. That's
All right.
my conundrum.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next, let's hear from Matt.
Yeah, I have the same conundrum because, the Mario Kart does stand, the test of time, but it wasn't, like, as ambitious as Morrowind set out to be. And sure, not all the things in Morrowind worked, but, they were at least tried, and they were not something that had previously been set up in the gaming world. Mario Kart just kind of, improved on, like, what they already knew, and, like, that's part of the reason why it stands the test of time, because it's a simple concept, and it'd been done before, like, almost to a T. Same concept, racing had been done before. Morrowind, not so much. They were just moving into, like, a quest tracker and, like, ways to find, like, where you're looking for, and, how you upgrade skills and all that. It wasn't fleshed out yet, so there wasn't a right way to do it. Morrowind did a good job at, like, making that first attempt.
All right, thank you, Matt. Next, let's go to Alex.
When I first saw this matchup, I thought that I would have a pretty easy choice, being Double Dash. And I feel like I've just been picking Double Dash, riding this nostalgia wave all the way through these rounds. And also because the games that it was going up against, I just didn't have any attachment to. Not that I have attachments to Morrowind, like I've clearly stated in the previous rounds, but the points that Matt and Mark have made, like, does make me appreciate, like, how much they, like, tried to implement new things into gaming, and it does sound like it was very influential to like the open world RPG experience that we kind of take for granted today. So I'm gonna have to think this one over a bit.
All right, thank you, Alex. I'll say that I'm in a very similar position to Alex, and I think I have to say the game that I like more, which is a little unfair because I haven't played very much Morrowind, is Double Dash. But I've also, hearing Matt and Mark talk about how like it is like one of the first. It is a very unique game in what it's trying to do, and definitely sort of helped forge the path for open world RPG games. Uh, Man, I think I may have to go with Elder Scrolls on this one just for the impact that it had and the massive improvement it made as a sequel. Because I love me some Double Dash, and I think the partner system was cool, but that's not quite the same thing as bringing a series from, or bringing a game concept from Doomland to full 3D, and establishing other genre conventions along the way. So with that, I'll open it up to general discussion.
I love both these games, and I have extreme amounts of, goggles that I've put on for nostalgia. But
Goggles
I
of the
really-
nostalgia variety.
yes, exactly. But I do think that Morrowind was a little bit more ambitious, and even though like I still revere Double Dash as the best Mario Kart game to come out to date, I think that Morrowind was more ambitious in what it did, and there's still some concepts that are not even seen in like the newer games. Like the aspect of levitation was completely stripped from Oblivion and Skyrim, and so like the fact that you could like levitate on top of buildings and levitate like through cities and all that, and it just made you move faster, and you just kept on casting and you could infinitely levitate, was like an amazing thing, and isn't really seen in any games like anymore in that series. And I think there's something to be said for that, because it was it's just a very unique game.
And to piggyback off of that, I think so. One thing I sort of remembered in the back of my head, but it only really occurred to me that the game that this followed, Daggerfall, is like one of the largest open world games ever made. I'm currently like hovering.
Second
Yeah,
or
yeah.
largest.
I'm
Yes, I've
currently
heard that.
hovering over a video that is 5 hours long of a
Of
person,
Yeah.
walking from one end to another. So like,
God.
I want to really like think about just how fucking Wild West the concept of an open world game was at this point. Like no one knew how to do it, because at first it was like, okay, we'll just make it big, and then like the selling point is that it's
Yeah,
big.
and it was like procedural generated, so like no place was unique. No
Yeah,
place
it didn't
was unique
matter.
at this point. Yeah.
And so for them to be like, okay, we're actually going to figure out a whole place, and we're going to figure out the history of this place, and we're going to figure out all the cultures of this place, and we're going to like fucking ground it in a like a very specific like lore and whatnot. I mean, obviously, it's storytelling that's been done a billion times, and tabletop RPGs had existed for decades before that. But again, like the task of porting that into a game and having it be not a weird shitty flop like Daggerfall is impressive. And like they clearly really embodied the lessons that they learned from Daggerfall and made something like impressive that was wildly different. And like Double Dash, 2 people, pretty cool, but is it as cool as totally rebuilding your game in a way that people like really respect looking back?
Probably.
These are my thoughts.
I think that, I like definitely like looking at Morrowind. Like I think it's they definitely took a lot of risks, and they were building a lot of stuff. I mean, but also I will say it was the third game in a series. It's still a game that was like built off of like, oh, what had worked last time, what didn't work last time, and technology was evolving. So they saw a lot of that. So I don't really want to say too much against it, and especially being an open world game in an era when it didn't really exist that much. And we're kind of like, didn't really, they weren't even really viewed as a thing that could really happen on the scale that Morrowind did. I will say, kind of going back to a point I made before, that like a game like Double Dash, short, simple, it's, maybe it didn't like evolve a ton. I don't think it had to need to evolve that much. because it's like Mark said, it's a racing game. It's a simple thing. There's only so much you can change before it just becomes like, why is this overly complicated and weird? But I do think one thing I said before that I want to bring up again is just the fact that Double Dash can be played today and it feels barely dated compared to when it was released almost 2 decades ago. A game like Morrowind, influential as it may be, you play it today, it feels like an old game. It feels like a game from almost 20 years ago.
My contention with that, though, is that the point of this is not what is the better game or what is the game that held up the best. It is what was the best sequel. What took the lessons of the previous game.
I think that the enjoyment of the game itself has to be taken into account there.
Let me step in here as moderator and say that it is not just which is the better sequel. It's what is the best video game sequel, which in some cases can mean if there are 2 games that are good sequels, which is the better game.
Sure.
I think that is valid to consider that in addition to like the impact and the improvements made as a sequel.
Okay.
Because we aren't arguing that these are both good sequels. They are both good sequels. I'm just now arguing that one of them can be played today and still, be very enjoyable by tons of people and picked up by anyone and enjoyed. I'm not even trying to say Morrowind is bad or that's necessarily the worst pick here. I'm just wanting to try and make that point because I feel like
he's just trying to fight for Double Dash a bit. A lot of great things have been said by Morrowind, and
I also feel like Double Dash is starting to get picked on a bit because it's the front runner, and I feel like in any situation, picking on the front runner for being the front runner is a lazy ass claim. Like saying Witcher 3 shouldn't be voted for because it's such a highly praised game. Like, that's like me saying that Halo Reach shouldn't be picked for because so many people love Halo Reach. And I know, Mark, you love Halo Reach.
Unfortunately, that is the end of our discussion time.
Yeah.
Now, you gotta cast your votes.
Can we make an entire podcast about Elder Scrolls 3 and
Well, tell you what, Matt can plan and lead that one.
Honestly, I'd like to go through the whole Elder Scrolls series and the whole Mario Kart series. That'd be it.
As a series, I feel like Elder Scrolls does more, but
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that is almost more in Mario Kart's favor.
All right, I think we need. I'd like one more vote for posterity, but then I think, oh wow, yep. Okay.
Alex, how dare you leave me on this island alone?
Morrowind takes it.
You. After it's already won, Alex abandons me.
Yeah.
True
Sorry. I am sorry, Maceo.
All right. Next up, we have another tough matchup. Battlefront 2 versus The Witcher 3.
Oh, no, this isn't tough at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tough for you.
Maceo, go ahead.
I'm sorry. This might be tough for you. Battlefront 2 is a fucking awesome game, but Witcher 3 is the freaking gold standard of games. So, yeah, don't even ask me. It's Witcher 3.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Is that all you got to say, Mace?
For Matt's opinion, which I'm fully fine with, it's the gold standard of game.
All right. Anything else you want to say in your minute,
No.
Maceo? Very good. All right. Then Mark.
Yeah, I'm stoked that I can finally be unabashedly behind Witcher 3. God, there's just so many great creature designs in it. It's such a lovely, consistent world. All the characters and people feel like they really belong in this space. All the creatures feel like an appropriate level of danger. It's an interesting story. It's a real God. Also, some of the best in-game cities I think I can think of in a game. Novograd's gorgeous, and it has like distinct neighborhoods and people dressed distinctly in those neighborhoods. That's not fair. I'm getting into nitty-gritty details that would actually be shitty if the other game tried to implement Battlefield 2 or whatever. Fuck.
Battlefield.
But again, once again, I gotta just put my boot on the neck of Star Wars here, and vote for The Witcher.
See,
all right,
don't like that. I think that's bullshit. This whole I don't like this whole thing, so I'm gonna vote against this one game.
All right, I hear you, Maceo.
I just haven't played it.
Next, let's give Matt his chance to talk.
I don't really have a whole lot to say. Other than I enjoyed every single one of these games more than Witcher 3.
Hell yeah.
That's all I have to
Holy
say.
shit.
I don't have anything to say. I'm not going to say anything
I'm sorry,
else.
you
Oh
enjoyed
my
Nier
God.
Automata more than Witcher
No,
3?
the ones that are up to bat. I didn't
Oh,
play
okay.
them.
I thought you
Yeah.
were listening to this whole series. I was like, wait.
Oh
Just
my
saying.
god.
I don't have anything else to say. You can,
Matt,
All right, Alex.
respect.
you know.
All right. I think it's pretty clear which one I'm going to vote for. So I'd like
Yeah,
to
Alex
go
doesn't
through
need to
things
talk
I've said
anymore.
So far. So, Maceo, you mentioned that you don't like it how Mark started off with like a lot of praise for The Witcher 3, but then his ultimate decision is because he doesn't like Star Wars, he's going to also vote for Witcher 3. The thing is, you don't like that, but I've also made a pretty similar like decision-making process and made it very clear that I'm voting for something just because I don't like the other thing as a whole.
Oh, I know. I'm
But
biased
I feel like
against
you're
Mark
just
because he's
being
a
feeling
contrarian.
personally attacked because of your love for Star Wars.
No,
so,
I'm just attacking Mark because he's a contrarian.
yeah. But
It's a living-
and I know that Mark will always vote with that attitude.
also, like Matt, I love you, man, but you're entitled to your opinion and what kind of games you want to play. I'm not going to tell you have to play Witcher 3 because it's one of the best games ever made. Like, if you don't want to play it, you don't want to play it, and that's totally fine. We can play other games together, and that's cool. But I'm gonna just say right now that you also didn't think much of The Last of Us, which is also a very critically acclaimed game. So
He doesn't like
there's-
story
There's
games,
a bit of a
man.
trend here, right? And that's all I want to point out. And
Okay.
that's okay.
We're
Thank-
not going to
thank you,
get
Alex.
into an argument about The Last of Us. That argument has been had for 7 years.
All right. I will take my minute now, and I would like to. I have a case to make. All right, I got a case to make.
Let's hear it, bud.
All right. So I think Battlefront 2 and Witcher 3 are both excellent games. Top class. Hard to ask for better games than these. But something I will say to Battlefront 2's credit is that I never got tired of playing that game. Like, I didn't stop playing that game because I got tired of it. Witcher 3, honestly, by the time I had gotten to the second DLC, I was kind of feeling some fatigue with the whole concept. Which, keep that in context, like, that's
about
after having
60
gotten
hours
to the second
in.
DLC. Maceo, this is my time. That's after having gotten to the second DLC, right? So I've played a shit ton of the game. Obviously, I enjoyed it. But I think Witcher 3 doesn't do as much as some other open world titles have done to combat kind of open world fatigue, in the sense that like there's so much shit to do and you have a huge like checklist to do and some of it's not interesting. So that's all I'll say to Battlefront 2's credit. And with that, I'll open up to discussion, and I'm sure I'm gonna get some spicy takes here.
I'm
No,
not.
I'll back
I want to
that
say
shit up.
thank you to Mark on the story note, because he's right. I don't like story games a whole lot, and I usually play for the gameplay, and the story doesn't really matter to me. I don't like feeling like I'm like interacting with a clunky movie while I'm trying to play a game.
Hell yeah.
So that's all I have to say
Fuck
about
up,
it.
Mark.
No, it's
story
seriously
games.
like because I love those games. I love Red Dead 2. I love all that. But like I genuinely, because I remember banging my head against a wall trying to get Matt to like those games that I was into, and it actually made me really appreciate like games that had good gameplay. Like Matt, you've showed me a lot of cool games that I would not have been into because I love to fucking rub my nose in the lower man's game. So I mean, I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I really do value your takes, and I think that like a lot of these games, in order to be a good quote story game, it has to be like a massive AAA title that a bunch of fucking shit went into and a bunch of critics acclaim it, and I think it takes guts to stand against that tide. So respect.
I mean,
I'd
I've
also
played
like to say-
great fucking small scale games that have an awesome story.
That's true. That's also very true. And I also like to back up what Gabe said as well, because I played through The Witcher 3, thoroughly fucking loved it. I didn't even start one of the DLCs, and I didn't even finish all the side quests. I only did the only side quests that I finished 100% were the Witcher contracts, because those were awesome. The rest, okay, I couldn't fall in love with. I agree with your critique. I'll still give it to Witcher 3, but a lot of valid critique all around.
I will
here,
say that
folks.
an open world game, I mean, even though it gives you all these things, I feel like a game like The Witcher does kind of let you play it in a way the way you want, like you don't necessarily like I don't do all the
Every
Witcher
open world
contracts.
game does that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, that's just kind of like to say that there's too much content. It is a valid argument in a lot of cases, but I do think it's also one of those things where it's like, well, you can kind of pick and choose.
Well, that's
you
not
also
the
have
critique.
the option of like not playing all the side
Yeah.
quests.
Of
Like
course
I don't
That's
like
not
like
your
I
thing.
don't do all the like Witcher contracts because I like them, but like I enjoy more of the interactive stuff. That's like the combat's fun, but I enjoy more of the like story based stuff. Because
Meanwhile,
really,
I'm sitting here
really
doing
fun
all
to
the side quests, all the treasure hunts, and all the Witcher contracts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
times
think
over.
what I was trying to get at with that, you get tired of it eventually, is that I think what I'm really trying to say with that is Battlefront 2 is a tighter experience.
Yeah.
well, it's also a very singular one. Like I completely agree. It's like it's one of those things where like like that's how you can play like a multiplayer game over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
They
sorry, I
also
totally
had,
cut
like,
you
they
off
also
there.
had single player though.
They did.
And, like that was really, really like cool and
It was
not
very
a
cool.
lot has been
Yeah,
done
no,
with
no.
that,
I
in
love
the past or in
love
the
single
future.
I will never say
Yeah.
anything really critical of Battlefront 2. I will just say Witcher is a better game.
I'd also like to say, for the record, I did not finish the Witcher contracts because I liked the combat. I did not like the combat as much. I did it because the monster designs are top notch and fucking awesome, and I wanted to see all of them.
I will also
That's
say that
fair.
like as far as like open world fantasy games go, Witcher 3 has my favorite combat for the most part. Like so many open world fantasy games I played where you have a sword and like fight and use magic and shit. Like I don't like Skyrim. I hate the combat in it especially.
That's
Like,
interesting because
I find-
I have the complete
find it
opposite
very-
experience.
I find it very boring, and I feel like I'm just like hitting a button and hitting a button.
It's
and
it's
swinging my
weird
sword.
playing
Skyrim
a first-person
combat is
game
pretty
that's
dumb.
not a shooter.
That is also
like-
a weird feeling to me.
Yeah,
But you have a bow
Like
and
it-
arrow. It's the same thing.
And it looks-
I like
yeah,
the bow
but
and
it looks
arrow, but I don't
really
use
awkward.
it much.
Like it's I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think that,
I have nothing
For-
against
I mean,
bow
granted,
and
you can play in
arrows.
third yeah,
Just
but,
make for
like,
honor.
I don't know. I feel like a game that has like bow and arrow and like melee combat is served better by a third person mode because you can have a bit more like unique stuff to it. I feel like melee games that are in first person very rarely achieve like the level that you want it to because you can't make it so fancy because otherwise it becomes disorienting.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Although I don't know, something about the combat in that game really
Yeah.
feels a little
Like
bit
that's
clunky
I think
to
that's
me.
why I like Fallout more than like Skyrim because Fallout feels better suited to a first person.
And like I
in my
brushed
opinion.
upon it, Matt, in my long spiel of during my in quote 1 minute of Witcher 3. But like you didn't get very far into the game, and it is an RPG game. So like the more you play and the more experience you get and the more abilities you unlock, like the combat does deepen. Like you start out with like the very very base level of abilities that Geralt has access to. So that could be a part of it. I'm not saying it like if you grinded 300 hours into your first playthrough like I did and unlocked every single ability, you'd like it more because that process itself might not be enjoyable for you. But, like I feel like
It's like the
not.
same argument as
I know.
let's
but I
fucking
don't
it's
think
the
it's
same thing
fair
as-
to.
sorry, Borderlands 2. It's the same
Alright,
thing.
I'm
as
gonna let
Borderlands
Alex
2.
finish
I don't
his
think it's
sentence
okay,
and
go
then
ahead, go ahead,
it's
sorry.
voting time.
I don't think it's fair to judge a game's combat system that you haven't fully explored yet. Like you're
I will give
Okay.
that like a game's
sorry,
enjoyment out of the
Maceo,
gate
we're-
is important.
Vote!
It's voting time. It's voting time.
We can talk while we vote.
We can, but I'm just letting you know.
I have spoken. I have given most of my 1 minute pitches in 10 seconds, so I'm gonna take my extra time that I am afforded, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just wanted to let them know that I can say whatever the fuck I want.
Oh, okay.
No, that's a joke.
I'm so excited. We have a like the progenitor of like the third world fucking
What?
we have, like, the OG open world game versus like
Oh, you're talking about
probably
Morrowind.
the most natural conclusion.
confused.
of
All right,
the
Matt.
OG
I'm guessing
world.
that you're voting
I mean,
for
yeah,
Battlefront.
I'll vote
futilely.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
I mean,
Also,
yeah,
I
I
love
can't
Battlefront.
really say much.
Yeah.
I know people say it's a fantastic game, so
This is
I
my-
really,
this is
I'm
like
not
me-
disappointed in any means.
This is like me looking at my good kid
Okay.
and then me looking at my kid who's like the valedictorian. One of them is just plainly better.
Oh my god. All right, Maceo, we got the final matchup to determine one of our finalists for this bracket.
One of them.
One of our
Yeah.
finalists.
This is
Semi-final,
such a weird
baby.
bracket. What a... This is a weird bracket.
I know. All right. Between
I want our next podcast to be a random weird thing, not a bracket. Let's
All right.
Let's come up with a weird question.
All right, between Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and The Witcher 3, which is the better sequel? You have 1 minute. Go.
Witcher 3. I
you have any more words?
I based whatever, I am sure it was a great game. It's a very influential game. I am honestly betting that Witcher 3 wouldn't exist in the same capacity without it. But Witcher 3, there's something to be said for taking a risk and it not paying off, and there's something to be said for making a fucking kick-ass game.
All right, thank you, Maceo.
And there's no dice rolly smacking.
The smacking that thing. All right, Mark, you're up.
So once again, I have a dilemma that I'm kind of working out in my head, and it's sort of like the last time this came up, but it's a little more nuanced this time, which is that, and it's hard because Witcher's an example of beating it in some ways. But anyway, there's been this trend that, at the very beginning, you have basically just like tabletop RPGs, which are really deep and really complex. And for the most part, the way that those games have been transferred into video games has been to simplify them, to kind of streamline them. The kind of best, most classic example of this is to like watch Bethesda games, compare like Fallout New Vegas to Fallout 4, and it's very dumbed down. And I want to say that I think I have to give it to Witcher, just because I think that Witcher was under a lot of pressure to give into that tendency, and it didn't, which is respectable. They have meaningful parts where you can change the direction of the story. The dialogue trees don't really super change things, but they add some interesting depth to stuff potentially. And I think it's where Morrowind wanted to go as a game. I think it's a logical successor to that kind of game, which is why I'll give it to Witcher.
Thank you, Mark. Next, let's go to Matt.
Yeah, no, I agree with all Mark's points. That's all.
Okay, not gonna come to bat for Morrowind.
Pulling from my book.
Not really. I don't see that there's that much of a point.
All right, then Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I've said everything that I can about Witcher 3 without going into really nitty-gritty details, which I don't think is very fitting for this 1-minute pitch here. So I think it's pretty clear that my vote is for Witcher 3, and I'll just end it at that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll say I believe a lot of the points have been echoed, or I'll echo a lot of the points that have already been said. I think that both of these games innovated. You could argue that Elder Scrolls 3 innovated more, but in this case, I think that Witcher 3, when you combine like how much it improved from Witcher 2, plus just how good of a game it was in general, I don't personally think Morrowind is as good of a game. I would also have to give it to Witcher 3. So, is there... All right, I'll open up the discussion. Is there anyone who's going to bat for Morrowind at this point? Or
I mean, I agree.
Matt
It
is.
probably is a better game. I mean, I won't dispute that, but I think it was a better sequel. So like, it's like the thing, whether you want to choose, is it a better sequel or is it a better game? Like, it's hard to know. So
I will give props to Matt for holding strong this whole time.
Well, I want to elaborate my take just slightly, and kind of simplify it, which is that Morrowind is a game that is venturing entirely into the unknown from its previous game. It is building on what it knows, which is very little, because it is in the fucking Wild West, and it did impressive for that. But I think the challenge that faced CD Projekt Red from Witcher 2 to Witcher 3 is different, which is that there was a precedent that they could have followed, and they could have made their job way fucking easier. They could have basically made like an Assassin's Creed type of game where you just roll around and you do a bunch of really simple ass tasks in various parts of the map. And
Look at
people in the
fucking
West,
grind.
people in the West are not like terribly wedded to like the kind of lore of The Witcher, so it would have been very easy for them to do that. Even though it's their third game, they could have like been like, oh, it's an even bigger open world now, and we're really committing to this open world, and they could have totally half-assed it, but they took a hard road and they really fleshed out those communities. They made a combat system that, while is goofy and at times very inconsistent and shitty, it is deep. There is like a logic to it, and there is something that can be said for it. Although I totally understand anyone who picks it up and is like, "This is fucking shitty." So I'll give it to Witcher for that.
Yeah,
They took the hard road.
I think Mark put some good points there, and I think that I never said The Witcher 3 had the best combat. I think it's far from it. I don't think it even makes like my top 5 list of like favorite combat systems in
No,
a
not
game.
at all.
I just say that it's at first glance it's wonky and seems very surface, like very shallow, but it does grow into something more complex that you can mess around with. Maybe not to the extent of other games that you can play, but there is more to be explored there. That being said, yeah, Geralt, he can't take a drop more than fucking 5 feet without dying. He goes from like kind of awkwardly running to his movement overall is very clunky.
It's very
and
bizarre.
Roach.
Yeah, and the free
Roach is on the house.
You are not
Oh,
allowed
yeah.
to say anything about Roach. Roach is perfect just the way he is.
Yeah, so no, I'm not saying the game's perfect or it doesn't have its flaws, but like I think I brushed upon it earlier very, very briefly because I just had so many things I wanted to talk about with The Witcher. But the scale and scope of each game, and what Mark really said, they could have kind of copped out and gone a simpler road, like just a fast cash grab. But they really went the extra mile of just blowing this game up into this huge, beautiful experience and world. And like, if you look at Witcher 1, it's just about Geralt losing his memories and trying to recover him mostly. And in 2, it's like a little more politics, assassination of kings. In Witcher 3, to give you some perspective, an assassination of a king is an optional side quest to like just see that gradual increase of like scale between the sequels. Because like it sounded like someone was trying to say that Witcher 3 isn't that good of a in quote sequel, but I would argue against that as well. I think it's a great game. I think it's a great sequel.
And I would say
Witcher series.
I almost feel like Morrowind is a tragic situation because it is like a lovely, deep exploration of a game that Bethesda took a look at every single like subsequent iteration and said like, how can we simplify this? How can we achieve this with the minimal effort? Like with every subsequent game. And now, fucking the next Elder Scrolls game, it's just gonna have that same like 4 option wheel every time you get into a dialogue, just like yes, no, sarcastic, Gabe's butthole. Like that's all it's gonna fucking be, and it's gonna suck ass. And it's really shitty that Bethesda didn't respect what they had.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean anything for this discussion, but I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have thoughts on that statement, but
We got 10 seconds left before we vote.
well, this is our final pick. I think we can just talk.
All right. I'll give y'all another 2 minutes. How about? I think Matt hasn't had enough of an opportunity, if I'm being honest, to talk.
Yeah, I think Matt can.
So I want to give him the floor.
I don't know if there's anything else for me to say though. Like, I agree with all the things that Mark have said, and I think that, like in general, like Morrowind did have like a more interesting world, at least to me. Like the more creatures are definitely more diverse and stuff. Obviously it has more ability to put in like a lot more shit. There's a lot more like resources riding on this, and it's a lot like more pretty HD and all that. But like the world is not something you have seen before in Morrowind. It is like a very
Heard that it is
strange
very
area.
alien and something like very different. I've heard that.
Yep.
I do think that like Morrowind is a victim of just like in this bracket, especially of coming out when it did. I mean, it's a 20-year-old game. Like, is it really going to compare to a modern game that well? I mean, if it had come out today, it could be a totally different thing. And I think that's kind of one thing that, like, that's just the hard part of making a bracket like this and having, be like, oh, what's the best game ever made? Like, everybody's got their, like, their things they hold on to, and, there's, like, opinions on things, but, like, it's hard to objectively be like, oh, this is a better game, even though this new game is objectively a better game, but it's also got 15 years of not just, time, but also the history of video games to learn from.
Yeah, and I think also, like, I try to balance both the, like, is it a good game, which is mostly benefited from the time it was released, and like how much did it innovate. And I think, like, Morrowind by far wins the innovation category in this.
Sure.
I think Witcher 3 has a little bit of both, which is why it pushes it over the edge for me.
I also feel like with games, like, the most important thing is that you enjoy it. Innovation is important for sure because things should change. But, like, if I don't like a game, even if it made a lot of, like, bounds for, like, game history, and granted, again, I have not played Morrowind, so I can't say whether or not I like it, but just, looking at that as a whole, like, I would rather play a game that I enjoy rather than a game that I necessarily just admire for taking a risk.
Yep.
True. Although you're getting to, like, better sequel, better game category.
Sure, but we talked about that already. I mean, that's important.
Yeah,
better sequel also implies what's a good game.
I also feel like that kind of makes like pre-1990s games like really
and,
like
and
makes them really
like,
hard to compete because
we put almost nothing pre-2000
not good
on the
games.
list.
I mean they are. They're just like
dated.
I mean, like, I'm not going to throw like
context.
Super Mario Bros. 3 on here
That
because
we can't
even though it's awesome, like what is that going to really beat a modern Super Mario game?
Yeah.
Like,
All
I
right.
think,
I think
vote.
I don't
We can
know
vote.
if
I'm fine.
at this point I think we know how we're gonna vote, right?
Yep.
So
nope.
Yeah.
We need 2 hours more of
oh,
discussion.
God.
This was probably my favorite matchup. I think it's a super interesting thing to compare like someone who's new on the scene to like the one who stood on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
I think Mark's take on how like Morrowind was kind of like a tragic tale.
Yeah.
It really just this is completely going away from like which game is the better sequel or game, but just like talking about just the gaming industry in general. It is really sad to see the rate of deterioration over these last few years with Bethesda, and it does really bum me out that they could have built off of Morrowind and made something incredible following it, and it's been
I'm
going
curious to see what their
downhill.
future is. I feel like they could, like, because, like, as a whole, I know a lot of people love Skyrim.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like they could take, criticisms of their previous games to heart. I don't know if they will, but I think
Not
they could.
holding my breath.
Yeah, but I feel like they are looking at the
Howard.
next Elder Scrolls game very much as like their big chance to like come back to like what people loved before, and I think they could I think there's a lot they could do. I will also say, I mean, like they were with like even if it didn't work like Fallout 4, I respect them trying to make the main character a bit more of a character by giving them dialogue, even if it did take away from like the more like role playing part of it. Like for me personally, as a guy who loves story games, I like my characters to be characters. Like, I like Fallout, but I would, and it's fun to be them. But I also respect a game trying to be like, hey, this is a real person.
I just don't have any faith in Todd Howard, and like if we're talking just like on a gaming company standpoint, are you more excited about the next Bethesda like Elder Scrolls game, or are you more excited about the next game CD Projekt Red has coming out, which is Cyberpunk?
Oh well, of course. I mean, well, that's just that's the reputation they built. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd say Bethesda.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's
History
important.
plays into everything.
I think it's important to think about like Bethesda will never go back to Morrowind. Maybe they'll I think the furthest back they'll slide into like long-winded conversations with other NPCs and like weird super convoluted storylines. The closest they'll come to that is Skyrim. That's as far back as they'll go. Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't think like maybe you'll be able to have a character that you can like make really stupid and like and, like only has like dumb speech, and maybe like they'll be like you'll have the opportunity to make them really smart and like and that'll change their, because that's what they had in the past. Like these games, you could totally shape your dialogue based on your stats, and that
Mhm.
because that's the TTRPG shit that was coming through.
I
There
also
was so
will say-
much.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I guess my point is that like it'll never go back to that.
Yeah.
It's
I-
simply
or sorry, yeah,
unlikely.
sorry. I don't
done.
think that necessarily that a game can though, because in one way, just because since games are much more based on like gameplay these days,
Yeah,
there's not as much room to build that much of the interactivity in that world. You know, like I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I do think that, you know, like the fact like Morrowind, if it was made today, I don't think, you know, even if they went to it the exact same approach, I don't think it would be the same in that respect, because
Well,
they would be putting so much more time
Sometimes,
building the in like the game.
due diligence is dropped in favor of just getting the damn game out.
Well,
Yeah.
and you know, like,
And there-
do we want satisfying gameplay or do we want as
Lots
much
of
depth
content.
to like the character?
Well, I guess there.
like-
I mean, there are games that are doing that. They're just not AAA big titles made by big.
Sure,
like,
well-
for instance, Disco Elysium, which came out at the beginning of this year,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will never stop singing the praises of, because it is that. It is like
Yeah.
it is like, you know, going back to really in-depth storyline where you pick a sort of affect of your character, and that gives you like dialogue options that change the rest of the game. So I mean, it's possible, but granted, it takes a shitload of work, and it takes a shitload more work than simply making like tight gameplay. And that's not to diss on tight gameplay. It's just, for me personally, I really like that stuff, and I think it's kind of tragic that we don't see as much of it.
Yep. All right, folks. So this is going to be an extra long fourth episode, or whatever it ends up being, however it ends up being split. Just before we wrap up here, I want to just get a pulse of how everyone's feeling about the bracket so far.
Definitely.
Witcher 3 is one of our finalists. How do you guys think? How are you feeling about the next sessions?
I fully support it.
Do we have any bets on who it's going to go up against?
I am more interested to see what the top half of the brackets are going to be, because I feel like there's a lot more there that to me really stand out as like all-time greats.
Actually, the opposite. I was
waiting
for today's session because like there are a lot more games that I was a lot more heavily invested in this half. You know, being that all four.
Sure, yeah.
Were in this half.
I like
Yeah,
a
me
lot of the
too. My
games.
dreams got crushed.
I like a lot of the games in this matchup, but I feel like the like bracket we have above is like games that are like not just amongst us, but like widely perceived worldwide as like some of the best.
Yes, this is
Or
true. Yeah,
biggest
there
game
are a lot of good like top contenders here.
I'll also say too that I probably there are some games that I wouldn't even necessarily consider were my top picks that I picked for this, or at least if I was to redo it today, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's hard to say. I feel like I had sort of a laissez-faire approach, but I am excited to see what comes next. I'm curious to. Sorry, go.
I'm curious as well. I think it's probably going to be the top tiers. I think it's probably going to go to Odyssey or Breath of the Wild. I think is going to be our contender.
I feel like
I don't
Breath of
think
the Wild is
Odyssey's
going
gonna
to
make
go
it.
into Witcher 3.
Yeah, I think
There's enough animosity against platformers
I'm worried that-
in the wider
but-
group.
Breath of the Wild is probably going to be the contender. I'm thinking. I'm
think
not
so too,
sure
yeah.
we'll be able to get
mean,
enough people on
I'm
Halo
sorry,
Reach or God of War.
Like I love
Fucking-
Mario Odyssey, but I do think that Breath of the Wild's a better game.
If it's Breath of the Wild versus The Witcher 3, though, that's fucking boring. I feel like
Why?
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know.
Like,
I
'cause-
think-
Why, Mark? Two of the best games ever made. You have a problem with that?
well, they're two games that are attempting something similar, obviously with different like flavors. But like, what
Yeah,
we're
but that
basically
shouldn't-
saying there is that like, oh, to be an excellent game, one must be a.
I don't think so. I think we're just choosing these as like
Or
some of the
to
best
be
games.
a good sequel, and it just has to be a really good game.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
guess.
saying. Like, I don't think it matters what genre it's in. It's the point of like, what is the quality?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I get what you're saying that like it's two fantasy open world games, but like, you know, if that's what it comes down to, that's what it comes down to.
I'm also going to call out that Breath of the Wild could be going up against Halo Reach or God of War. I think either one of those would be pretty tough matchups.
Yeah,
So
my
I don't
top
think we can
two-
Sam and
say,
Max are here.
I don't think we can confidently say that Breath of the Wild is in it just yet.
I honestly, like personally, I will be bummed if Halo Reach makes it, but that's just me because I'm not a huge.
I remember Reach.
But what about God of War, Mark?
It's pretty good, but again, I'm talking about the Little Big Planet with a gun, baby. It's that shit could do it all.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
my
I think
personal
I'll end
top
on.
contenders were Breath of the Wild and God of War.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
I mean, I fully expect that by like the second round of our next session, all of my picks will be out. So I'll be kind of excited to have
My
the
picks are out
weight
too.
the weight of like all these others taken off my shoulder, and I can just vibe and feel free, and that'll be great.
Sweet.
Yeah, same.
All right.
I had a lot planned for this one, and look what good it did me.
All right. Well, I think I'll wrap up this session for now.
Oh, we're still recording.
Yes, we are still recording. The next session, I'll make sure that Sam and Max are there for, because I think a lot of their picks are in this top bracket, and obviously, they helped influence it. I can't promise how soon that session's gonna be, but we'll find out. But yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by and having some good, lively, and respectful discussion. I had a great time, and I hope you did too.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We'll be waiting for the next time.
Yeah.
All right,
And
and
thank you for putting
stop.
this together again.